The Netflix Castlevania show recently released its second season, concluding its adaptation of Castlevania 3 Draculas Curse, and leaving the show open for adaptations of other games such as Symphony of the Night and Curse of Darkness. It's apparently based on an old movie trilogy plan written by Warren Ellis back in 2007, with Season 1 adapting the first film, and Season 2 combining the second and third. So the idea of adapting Castlevania 3 has been in place for over a decade. But why 3 specifically? Why not the original or the massively popular Symphony? Here's what I think. If we go into this with the mindset that this could be the only ever mainstream Castlevania adaptation, we want something that represents the franchise as a whole. It's best to stick to the original series, so let's drop the Lords of Shadow games since those are a reimagining. Adapting those would be like adapting DMC instead of Devil May Cry. Additionally, any that rely on previous installments for context, such as crossovers or direct sequels, also have to go, since this story needs to be able to stand on its own. It should also be a classic story of Belmont vs Dracula, so any that don't star Belmont and any that don't feature Dracula are also out. As good as entries like Symphony of the Night or Order of Ecclesia may be, they don't really fit this criteria and are somewhat reliant on the rest of the franchise to really work, so they're out. And for a more specific criteria, the 1944 setting of Portrait of Ruin is a bit too modern a setting to be considered classic, so let's cut that. These criteria trim down our options quite a bit. Now, I'm sure some of you are asking, aren't you overthinking this? Just adapt Castlevania 1 since it's the obvious choice. The problem there is that Castlevania 1 is just Simon running around inside the castle on his own. It might work for a fan film or 20-minute episode, but for a full movie or season, no. Sure, you could include a portion set outside the castle as build-up and some supporting characters to go along with Simon, but that's just Castlevania 3. So let's remove 1 as well as the adventure, since this largely applies there too. This leaves us with 3 pretty good options: Dracula's Curse, Rondo of Blood, and Legends. Now, I could take the easy way out and say that it's more classic to have a male Belmont fight Dracula and discount Sonia, but she's suffered enough for her gender already. Instead, I'm going to present 4 arguments for why Curse of Darkness is a better choice for this adaptation than the other 2. Status. Trevor and his story are more classic than Richter or Sonia. Yes, Richter is in the iconic Symphony, but Trevor goes back to the NES days. He was even chosen as the only other Belmont to join the OG Simon for Judgment, as well as appearing in Curse of Darkness, so he's clearly one of the more important characters in the franchise. Sonia, meanwhile, has only appeared once.
Not for lack of trying.
Freedom. Dracula's Curse's plot is very classic video game. You have the premise and the end, and that's about it. It's all gameplay in between, with the occasional interaction between the characters when they first meet. Legends is similar, but has a bit more going on, with Sonia's meeting with Alucard and such, and the rather weird direction that ultimately goes. Rondo, meanwhile, made much more of an attempt to tell a compelling story, even featuring full-on cutscenes. Choosing an entry with less plot allows for more creative freedom for the writers, since they can generally add material to flesh the story out without being accused of changing the story. Romance. Romance may seem like an odd criteria for choosing a Castlevania to adapt, but if done well, romance can really add to a story. And as we saw in the actual show, Trevor and Cypher are bloody adorable. Richter has Annette, who in some versions is turned into Carmilla or a lesser vampire, which could make for some compelling drama, but as an otherwise non-combatant NPC, she wouldn't be able to have cool fight scenes alongside her lover as Cypher can. And the less said about Sonia's romantic option, the better. On a related note, let's be real, this is the first good design Cypher's ever had, and it's bloody perfect. Future. Dracula's Curse introduces Alucard, who then appears in Symphony. The game is also used for the backstory of Curse of Darkness, which begins shortly thereafter and sees Trevor return. I did say the adaptation should be able to stand on its own, but leaving the door open for sequels is okay as long as you don't need those sequels to tell a complete story. So Symphony and Curse of Darkness are now both on the table if you adapt Dracula's Curse. And if you finish the show, you definitely get the impression they intended it to be that way. Rondo also leads to Symphony while Legend sets up Dracula's Curse, but it could be seen as a little redundant to make another Belmont vs Dracula scenario after the first one. You can get away with this in a game by altering the gameplay, level design or perspective, which makes the similar plot somewhat acceptable. For a purely narrative driven experience though, this is not really an option and you'll want to do something different, so it's Legends, Rondo or 3, not 2 of them, and certainly not all 3. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see any of these games be adapted by this team. I love Shinoa, Sonya deserves a second chance, the iconic Simon deserves his time, Symphony would be an obvious hit, and even an original take on the Demon Castle War of 1999 would be great. But Curse of Darkness offered a great balance of a classic setup, plenty of freedom to mould the story, a strong group dynamic including a great power couple, and the potential for follow-up and expansion through multiple sequels. That's why, in my mind, Castlevania 3 Draculas Curse is the perfect source material for a Castlevania adaptation. What do you guys think? Maybe you disagree with my assessment and think another installment would be a better choice. By all means, make your case in the comments or even your own video. But I think, whether you agree with me or not, we can all agree that the Castlevania Netflix show in general is bloody awesome. Thank God it didn't suck, eh? If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to let me know why in the comments so that this show can get better from here.